Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in now that I've had the chance to read through your work on the Unit 4 discussion board. As usual, you did a great job of engaging with one another. You asked insightful questions that led to conversation about the ideas and the materials that we've been reading. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to point out here as we continue to move forward with our class. We're ending, or not ending, but we're getting nearer the end of the semester. Please do remember to always cite historical evidence in your responses to one another on the discussion board. You always need to cite evidence when you work on the blogs or in any of the assignments that you complete for this class. When I say that, what I mean is you need to cite specific examples from the readings or from the videos that support your ideas. For example, many of us were talking about the ways in which women were treated as inferior to men, which is not a surprise to us because we know that kind of general trend in history. And so a lot of our discussions ended up being very generalized in terms of how women were just inferior to men, and that's the way that it was, and things have changed without much other analysis or discussion. A better approach, or the approach that we're looking for in the discussion assignments, is to include specific examples from the articles, and I say the articles because this time around the McPherson article was the one that most directly engaged with that question. So cite specific examples that he shared with us in terms of the different ways that women resisted the U.S. occupations in the various countries that he looks at. So again, just moving forward, remember to always cite historical evidence. Going right along with that, one of the things that we're working on beyond just learning more about Latin American history is we're trying to think about historical thinking. How is it that historians approach the past? How is it that historians study the past and help us to understand the past better? So I want you to always, as much as possible, put on your historical thinking caps and try to put yourselves in the shoes of a historian as you approach the material for this course. That means to think critically about everything that you come across. One thing in particular that I'm thinking about here is the Mike Wallace video about Eva Perón. Many of us, not everyone, but many of us kind of took at face value all of the things that he said about her hating men, and he really painted a picture of her as a conniving, power-hungry sort of person. I wouldn't say that she didn't sort of seek power and even revel in it, but we have to remember again, what angle is he coming from? What kinds of interpretations is he giving us? And how does that compare to the way that she was described in the Chastain reading? Also, how does that compare to her own writings that we read in the Wood book? If you would like an extra credit opportunity, I have attached a link to a chapter from this book. It's called Mary, Mother, and Warrior. And in the interest of full disclosure, this book, written by Linda Hall, she was my dissertation advisor at UNM. Her main focus of research is the Mexican Revolution, but she had so many students that she taught here in Albuquerque and also when she was teaching in Southern California that had really strong devotion and really strong connections to Mary, the Virgin Mary, that she did a research project on ways in which the Virgin Mary manifested throughout Latin America. And so the chapter that I've given you here is one in which she looks at the life of Evita Perón and thinks about the ways in which Evita sort of drew on an existing devotion to the Virgin Mary. She's not saying that somehow Evita replaced the Virgin Mary, but what her approach does is it gives us a totally different interpretation of Evita than we've had thus far. And it also helps us think about how the Argentine people also saw Evita. Because, again, she's thinking about that connection to Mary, so she's thinking about how was Evita received by the people and why does that matter? And so, again, for extra credit, up to 30 points extra credit, if you want to read this and then write a chunky paragraph in which you explain what is Linda Hall's interpretation here. So what is she saying about Evita and the Virgin Mary in this article? It's a chapter of her book, but it's an article. And then how does that compare to the other interpretations of Evita that we've seen? And based on all of this, what are your kind of ultimate conclusions about who Eva Perón was as a historical figure? One of the difficulties with Evita and people like her, so we had some comparisons to heroes of the Mexican Revolution like Villa and Zapata in a couple of the discussion posts. The problem with these people is that they have a lot of kind of myths that have been built up about them because they are larger than life and because people have so revered them or so hated them that it's hard to really figure out, well, what was that person doing? Who were they actually? So again, think about those kinds of questions and think about all of this from the perspective of this is how historians work. This is how historians have to read multiple perspectives and sources, secondary and primary, in order to draw conclusions and create interpretations of what happened about the past. So please do weigh in on this one. Remember, it's worth up to 30 points extra credit. I am posting this as an announcement, but I will also post this as a thread in the Unit 4 discussion. So when you go to post your paragraph for extra credit, just respond to this video on the discussion board. And please let me know, as always, if you have any questions.